I also played an absolute shit ton of Dragon's Dogma this week.
Which was in fact based on announcements.
The news.
Yes, so that was not a coincidence.
Man, Dragon's Dogma is such a great, not good game. It's a great game. It's not a good game. Does that make sense to anyone but me?
Um, Perhaps because a lot of people have played it, and you have talked a lot about how great Dark Arisen was by comparison to the original thing that launched, and I guess the thing that's mainly I have a lot of awareness of like the pawn system and the fact that like plot stuff comes together, create a character is really good. What I guess I don't know that well is like what the combat is, what the combat feels like, and why that's good and unique.
Okay, so we're gonna pretend that Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen just came out, but also I've been playing it for years. Dragon's Dogma is the best 7 out of 10 game that has ever come out. Okay?
Okay. Okay.
What I mean by that, it is when it is strong in the parts in which it is excellent, it is one of the best games I have ever played in any genre. However, where it is weak, it is not just weak, it is in some cases actually missing because the game is laughably unfinished. The all the Dark Arisen had expansion content, and there's the post game and all that stuff. It is like 40% of its original design doc is actually in there.
Kind of like KOTOR 2.
Kind of like KOTOR 2. It is a open world RPG, action RPG, like a Skyrim, let's say, that only has one town, really, and one side town, and has huge swaths of land that nothing ever sends you to, ever. And there's no reason to go there, but it is there to explore, and there's enemies there. And it has a really, like, slapdash main quest that, like, you can just feel the huge story beats were ripped out. But despite its relatively boring landscape and terrible story, it has mechanical depth that is a cross between Monster Hunter and Devil May Cry.
Okay.
And has the most interesting AI buddy system ever in a game with the pawn system.
So the pawns are. I mean, so the pawns are like, it's not just that you have a summon that follows you around and helps you fight.
No, so the pawn system is actually extraordinarily complex, but that doesn't actually surface to most people because when you Dragon's Dogma is a game where you bounce off in the first 10 minutes and you'll never understand anything about it, and then you bounce off after 5 hours and you go, okay, I kind of get it, whatever. But it has a straight line up in terms of quality, in terms of getting better as you play it. The pawn system is every AI created character is going to act within their own AI paradigm, which is called an inclination, of which there are 9. Scather, Challenger, Mitigator, Utilitarian, Pioneer, Medicant, Guardian, Nexus, and Acquisitor. And these each have AI designations on their actions that combine with every possible skill in the game. In addition, you have a primary inclination, a secondary inclination, and a tertiary hidden inclination that will depend on their order of priority. On top of that, the character's personal knowledge of every enemy in the game will factor into those AI behaviors. So if they fought, say, undead and know that undead are weak to holy and fire, then the next time they fight undead, they will use holy or fire if they have it, and if they have an AI fucking plan such as mendicant or utilitarian, which will let them prepare for that. And most, if not all, quest markers on your map are going to depend on whether or not a person who is not you took your pawn out to do that quest, and then your pawn will learn the steps that they took on that quest alone out and will tell you where those markers are. And you're hiring other people's pawns that they've made, and they're all combining into this fucking thing.
And all of that works.
It
The
absolutely
AI
totally
works.
works. So you go and you hire, hey, I need a ranger and a mage, and I want them to have quest knowledge of the quests that I have active, and I pick them up, and then I look over and I go talk to them with the quest selected, and they will tell me, hey, I remember that this letter is dropped by this location, but there are wolves there, and when we get there, they will auto-equip fire on their shit, and then they will act according to their AI and fight the enemies appropriately. You can make a really good pawn, you can make a really terrible pawn, depending on your own personal actions and the inclinations that you give them. It's a whole fucking thing. It is easily the most complex AI simulation in a game ever. But you have to look at the wiki and dive super deep on it, and most people don't. It's a thing, and you level them a certain. It's super fucked, but it's cool.
Okay.
And it's really, really, really unique. And then for your own actual combat, it plays like a action RPG that is a slightly pared down version of Devil May Cry, like between Devil May Cry 1 and 3, in that your right arm and left arm each get 3 skills, and you can equip them as you would. So, say if I'm a fighter, my left hand is going to have 3 shield skills, and my right hand is going to have 3 sword skills, and those sword skills include literally Stinger. Like the first ability in the game is Stinger. It's called Blink Strike, but it's not. It's Stinger. Or the ability to swipe in the air, or the ability to skewer somebody and twist the knife, or bang on your shield to bring enemies towards you, or put your shield up and have your pawns leapfrog off your shield to get to higher up enemies.
Did I also see a like thing where you kind of mounted a griffin as if it were like a Monster Hunter thing?
Yes, it also has a grappling system because they wanted you to not just slash at a monster's feet constantly. And the way that it works is you jump and you hit right trigger and you just grab onto anything and climb around on it as if it were a Shadow of the Colossus. And that includes climbing to weak spots and slashing them, or some of the more interesting ones is climbing onto a Cyclops' face that has a mask on it, so that he tries to pull you off, and then you jump off, and he pulls his mask off by accident, which allows it. It is this, like, the moment-to-moment actually playing the game once you have a couple skills is absolutely incredible. It's just put into this really bare-bones setting that doesn't use a lot of it, and it has a... Depending on if you liked it already, it has the best or worst progression of any game ever, in which when you beat the game by defeating the dragon, the final boss, the entire overworld flies into what people refer to as the post-game, in which every single enemy and dungeon in the world are completely mixed around. The look of the game completely changes, all the items change, and it opens up a super dungeon. As well as the Bitter Black Isle DLC thing is a completely new expansion that is a pseudo-randomized rogue-like mega dungeon that has more new enemies in it than the entire game.
So is it a secondary goal to try to create a pawn that essentially will just crush bosses like Mimic Tier style?
Absolutely. You want to make the best pawn ever, because when you make the best pawn ever and people hire your pawn for long periods, they will pay you the pawn currency, which allows you to hire higher level pawns. So if Big Peach, who is the current pawn that I'm using, which is a 7.5 foot tall page, is very popular, I'll get hundreds of thousands of rift crystals, which I can then use to buy pawns that are like 20 levels higher than I am, which are assuredly going to have all the information on every enemy that I want to fight.
So you're not just going to hit a point where you've like made a perfect pawn 20 hours in, and now you can just sit back and watch it crush the game or anything like that.
Well, no, because your pawn is going to be following you around and it's going to be leveled according to you.
Okay.
However, what can happen is that when your pawn goes out on trips with other players when they are hired, anything that they learn or see in other players' playthrough will be synced with your pawn when you rest at an inn. So you'll fucking sit down and rest at the inn, and you'll get a message going, your pawn has learned of these 4 unfamiliar quests, or learned the 3rd tier of goblin knowledge, or learned how to fight drakes, or whatever.
So are you
There's
enjoying the pawn system more than the light combat, or
No, it's the combat is
is
the
solid
combat
enough?
and the
Yeah.
pawn
Okay.
system are tied intimately,
Okay.
because the combat isn't quite as in depth as Devil May Cry, but what makes it is you're actually making a 4-person party, and you're trying to synergize that party so that you have a situation where you're, say, fighting in the thick of it as your support mage is buffing your shit with fire, and the sorcerer is throwing down a firewall, and then the archer is shooting down harpies that are going around you. You're trying to build your perfect D&D party,
Yeah. Okay.
and when it works, it's like ideal. It is the
Mm.
only game I've ever played that's like it. And when it doesn't, it kind of sucks.
And you're connecting to one other person and their pawn, right?
You have your main pawn that you create and control everything about them, and then you can hire 2 others.
Right. Okay.
So for a total party of 4. Now, what does this mean when the pawns are constantly trying to tell you things? It means that if I walk near a lake, occasionally I'll have 3 pawns with the same voice actor telling me, fucking be careful, don't get into the water, all staggered on top of each other and
Right.
clipping into
Right.
each other's voices. I'll hear wolves hunt and packs arisen roughly 1 million times per game. I'm going to hear the phrase, the road splits up ahead, we must make doubly sure of our destination, every single fucking time I get to a certain split in the road.
The messaging soapstone system is inside of the pawn.
Yeah, and they constantly talk to you, to the point where, unless you turn it off, their subtitles track along the left side of the screen like Twitch chat.
Interesting. Pog. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
100%.
Okay.
It is one of the coolest fucking games, and the biggest problem it has is all the coolest stuff is after you beat the title final boss. And it goes from like the best 7 to like really like an 8 or a 9. Like the Bitter Black Isle thing, they tweaked the way experience worked. So if you start from level 1 and you try really hard, you can actually level completely through it and ignore the entire main game.
Whoa. Weird.
Because it has exponential XP. So if you manage to kill a couple things, you'll immediately leapfrog up to like level 15, that kind of thing.
Okay.
And the gear out there is actually randomized instead of placed. It's a great game, and people have wanted a sequel for it forever because it's so flawed, but it's so like, oh, the good is so good, and it's the only game that does this. And then Dragon's Dogma Online happened, and it has some of the coolest classes I've ever seen. One of which would appeal to you very strongly, Wooly. I don't know if you've ever seen the Dragon's Dogma Online Alchemist. It's
not at all. No.
It's a Full Metal Alchemist.
Oh shit. Okay.
It is throwing down, like, it's like their high jump is, I'm going to use earth to jump up. I'm going to punch and have earth spikes shoot out of the ground.
Nice.
Just
okay. Earth bending.
Basically. And it's like,
Cool.
But the game's also kind of ugly. Like it's the most generic. I remember you didn't want to give Dark Souls a shot because you thought it was very generic fantasy, right?
EverQuest shit. Yeah.
Dragon's Dogma is that game.
Okay.
It is.
Okay.
It is going for artist. Okay, the art style of Dragon's Dogma is the pencil art on the opposite side of the equipment, the starting equipment table in the Dungeons and Dragons 1 manual. Right? Just
the most basic.
Just the primeval archetype
Yeah.
of generic fantasy.
Yeah. It's, to me, it's the I've said it a couple times as the analogy, but it's the fantasy game that they reboot into in that episode where they do a D&D game.
Oh, totally, 100%.
Like, just nothing else to it. Yeah. Okay. But it's
So
all the
like,
trimmings and like extra bits besides the main
yeah, and also like
story.
Itsuno's idea of making an RPG is very different from everybody else, and you find out wiki diving. You would not find it in your natural case because the game has a single line about it. But you find out that height and weight affect your walk speed and your hitbox and your ability. Like heavier characters will have a harder time getting knocked off on grapples, and there are goblin holes you can only go into if you're 100 less than 145 centimeters tall.
Oh wow.
And
Character
if
creation bits. Okay.
and so your lamp is your lantern is a hip lantern, and the lantern has a hitbox that interacts with water. So short characters will have their lantern go out in knee deep water,
Jeez.
but
Okay.
tall characters will have it go out in waist deep water. It's like there's a million fucking little tiny systems that when you're playing it for a couple hours don't show up at all because you only have like one skill and your pawns are dumb and you're just doing this first quest, and it's just like, oh, that game's so great.
I mean, so the thing is when the systems are fun, but like you have to progress to get them, and combat is good when you eventually get a larger move list. Like in that beginning, I mean, even if the story is bad, like is there like what's compelling you forward? Are the boss fights delivering enough interest to like push you
um
on?
the game has a start, like a open tutorial where you're playing as a more built up character, like your abilities kind of thing, in which you fight a chimera, and the chimera fights are really cool because you climb on it and you can cut the tail off to have it stop. You can cut the tail off to have it stop spitting snake poison at you, and then the goat on its back will cast spells, and you can kill the goat to stop it from casting spells. But if you're able to kill the lion part of the chimera first, the boss's rigging will change to a goat movement style because the goat takes over the
Takes
legs.
over. Interesting. Okay.
So, like, like, and that it has a really cool big boss fight before that with a built up character that has like 6 skills.
Because
Um,
if the whole thing about the setting is that it's like pretty bland and not that compelling, then you're like, okay, but you can still get away with that if you have really fun boss fights, that you're trying
yeah,
to go seek out.
yeah. The only issue is that in the early game, you just aren't equipped for the average like Cyclops or whatever because you don't have any fucking skills.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it's one of those things. It's like it is trapped within the no man just play for 5-6 hours then it gets good
Mm-hmm.
genre,
Mm-hmm.
which you can't possibly ask that of people. But I'm very glad that I did.
And therefore, I mean, to just pull from the docket, when they walked up and said, "Hey, they're announcing 2," it's not just a "Hey guys, remember 10 years ago," but
Yeah,
there are 2s in production now. Nothing else to say besides the fact that we do it.
yeah. So Capcom has decided that the best way to announce things is to unbutton your shirt.
Sure.
That's
Just yeah, yeah.
that's the best way to do it.
Mm-hmm. Um, yeah. So I guess like taking all those bones and like putting them into something that I don't know, team up with not George R. R. Martin, but I don't know who. Like, what's your
Like
who's
Kentaro Miura.
well, I was gonna say like Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman.
Well, so the reason why I say that is if you remember
DLC
the original
promotion
version of
stuff.
Dragon's Dogma had DLC promotions for literal guts and Griffith armor,
Yeah.
and there's a Duke in the game that has an incredibly similar art style and story to the King of
Mm-hmm.
Midland,
Mm-hmm.
and the more you play it, you're like, it looks like Berserk without ornamentation,
Okay.
like without style, like generic Berserk.
Flat Berserk, yeah. I mean, look, team up with a talented writer that can help you sculpt that world into something better, and then work on the gameplay bits. By all means.
I want like, and then like I went and dug into like the what was Dragon's Dogma supposed to be before they didn't finish it.
Hmm.
And then you were supposed to go to the moon. You were supposed to have a giant snake, fast travel. They're gonna have more vocations and all that. And it's just like, man, just I want to. There must be a word for this where when you want a sequel, but all you want is the first one to be finished.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Where
Hmm.
you're like, oh no, it's just a little more. I don't know.
I know.
Like
Yeah.
the game has a what's called an affinity system, which was supposed to be, I guess, part of a larger romance system that is so hilariously obtuse and broken that it ends up turning characters that you gay or in some rare cases into child molesters by accident.
What the fuck?
Um, so here's how it works. Okay, affinity goes up every time you talk to a character a little bit. If you do quests for that character, it goes up a lot. Near the end of the game, right before you fight the dragon, the game will lock in whatever the highest affinity character is on the roster and say, this is your beloved. However, in the original version of Dragon's Dogma, they had no issue giving you affinity points at maximum for merchants or random characters.
Okay.
So tons of people ended the game with like the best merchant being the fucking guy, and he's like this fat old dude with a mustache.
That's just a
or
poorly
his,
designed system.
or his
like,
kid,
that's just,
and like
that's just a really dumb idea.
or the innkeeper.
Okay.
And like the cutscenes, or like so like the cutscenes will just play out like you're madly in love with the innkeeper, who's just some dude that you don't even remember his name. And in the and here's the best part: if the character that you are in love with has a mechanical function in the game, they're gonna take that function with them to your house from wherever the fuck they were in the game prior. And now you can get in a situation where the only innkeeper in this entire half of the game now lives at your house 10 feet from the other innkeeper. Or the only guy who sells weapons is now in your house.
It feels like an easy fix to that would to this just put a confirmation prompt that this is in fact the person you want to be your beloved.
No, it's got to be hidden. It's got to be hidden, man.
like,
It's got to be natural.
Like just a single thing to be like, actually, you know what? I don't want that dude. And then that's that.
So the solution they came to it is threefold. One, merchants obtain affinity at dramatically lower rates than all other characters. Two, an item was added to Bitter Black Isle that you can use to give to people that will set their affinity to 0. And 3, an item was added to the game that you can buy that when you give to a character, it will max out their affinity. So you can go up to a character that you like and fucking max out their affinity by giving them a ring, and then hopefully that'll carry over. The old solution, which still works, by the way, is, you know what people in this game really don't like? You unsheathing your weapon in front of them over and over, or picking them up and throwing them into walls. So
Okay.
I did a quest for a guy named Valmiro, and I talked to Valmiro, and a little like chime played, and his cheeks were rosy, and I went, fuck, because I finished Valmiro's quest. Valmiro loves me. So you know what I did? I fucking took my sword out in front of his face and tried to throw him off the cliff. And he didn't like that. So now I don't have to worry about fucking him by accident.
There you go. Relationship down.
Dude, it's like the weirdest game Capcom has ever made. Every single part of that game is fucking bizarre. Like who would make a game like this?
What if the sequel finds a way to salvage bits and pieces of Deep Down and integrate them, like the spear play? You know?
Deep Down is gone, dude.
There was a quote like a year or two ago where Sean Layden was like, "Hey man, I don't know what they asked him what happened, and he's like, I don't know what happened to it, but I think some of the teammates that Ono left behind might still be working on something." So,
No, deep down was supposed to be an engine demonstration of Panta Ray, which is a deprecated engine that's not going anywhere.
yeah, well,
Like deep down is gone. It is gone.
in actuality, though, if Dragon's Dogma represents, I guess, supposedly the introduction of these mechanics that are interesting but just not put together in the smoothest way, then
Oh boy, are they not?
the rule of a lot of big sequels that come along and make it all make sense. You'd hope that this
Yeah.
is going to do that, right?
Like when you're playing a game, you're like, man, this could have used another 6 months. This could have used another year. Dragon's Dogma could have used 2 more years.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just fucking weird. And also in the are we going to talk about the Dragon's Dogma 2 announcement separately or no?
No, we can go right into it. That's fine. I mean,
So they're doing the anniversary thing, and they're fucking jerking us around up until the last like 5 seconds of it. But one of the most interesting things is that fucking Monster Hunter is born out of Dragon's Dogma first. So the timeline is Itsuno works on Shadows over Mystara and goes, I want to make an action RPG as a party like this, where you all team up and fight a monster. And then that idea got taken out to go make Monster Hunter.
Oh shit! Monster Hunter came from D&D Arcade. Oh fuck. Okay.
Monster Hunter was born from the original idea for Dogma that then sat around for 8-9 years.
Huh. Damn. Okay. I mean, shit. Like, fucking Mystara is amazing. So I can see that. Adapting itself, to like someone like I can see Capcom being like, yeah, we can do this ourselves without necessarily the D&D license or whatever. And
yeah,
a bunch
no,
of
just have a team of 4 and they'll have different weapons and
and some of the boss fights. I mean, some of the like it plays like a beat 'em up with like more advanced like sub menus and skills and items and such. But like a big distinguishing part about the Mystara is that like the fights that are not against another human-sized enemy or giant orc, but like a set-piece wall monster,
Yeah, a super
massive dragon, yeah.
And then like I'm playing Dragon's Dogma and I'm thinking about Shadows of Mystara. I'm like, Dragon's Dogma, one of the things one of the only things about its graphics that are like legitimately incredible is the sorcerer their high-level spells are some of the largest spells you can cast in a game, where you cast like High Maelstrom, and you are actually throwing down like a 1 kilometer high tornado that is blowing everyone up. And when you cast High Bolide, you are having a cataclysmic meteor shower coming down. And I'm like, oh, those are the fucking spells from Shadows of Mystara. That's the exact fucking thing.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. Well, big sell on Dogma right here.
Dogma's also like mad on like it jumped up for on Steam numbers. Part of that's because the announcement and people like me are going like, wow, I love it. The other part is that it's like $6 right now.
Oh shit.
Which you can't beat $6 for Dragon's Dogma.
Yeah, I think I have it, but let me just make sure, because that's pretty good.
It was really nice when I loaded it up the other day, and I just saw a bunch of people on my friends list buy Dragon's Dogma for $6 hairs.
84% off.
You know what else, actually? There's one thing I forgot to mention that Steam has that's just... all versions have, but on Steam it's a little easier. Pawns that your friends make on your friends list are free no matter what level they are. So,
okay,
if you want to really tear that shit up, you can go and grab somebody's level infinity pawn,
And
which is
just
the level
break it.
cap, and just bust it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, there we go. For some reason, the DLC is more expensive. It's $30 for
Oh, the DLC is the
the
soundtrack, I think,
yeah, the extra shit. Okay.
which doesn't include the pop song that they originally had with it because the license ran out.
Wait, was it a pop song? I remember the demo had like a singing lady.
No, no, the demo of Dark Arisen, but Dragon's Dogma original had like "Into Free," which was a Japanese pop song singing about the Dangan and the wind is pushing me.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
Literally, I am the Dangan. Remember
Okay.
Indestructible? Remember
Yeah.
that fucking period?
Yeah. And now we got Ain't on the Sidelines, I believe, but
Yeah.
what I want is the other one. Cool. Okay. All right, Capcom. Yeah, no. I'm interested in seeing like a lot of that recycled into a more interesting setting because, or not setting, but just a better overall thing because
So like
I
Dragon's Dogma Online already did that, and it's just like, you know what the game just needed? It needed more. There's only so many different recolors of harpies you can fight before you get tired.
enemy variety. Okay. Yeah. All right.